The Katha Upanishad in simple English, Part 3, consisting of the three sections of Chapter 2. The Katha Upanishad concluded. The self existent Lord made the openings of all the senses outward looking. Therefore, most people look outwards in the direction of the senses and not within themselves. Some wise one, however, in search of life eternal, instead of looking outwards, turned his eyes inward instead, and saw the Self. The Self, therefore, is not to be sought through the senses which are outward looking. People who are small minded go after the outward pleasures of the senses. By doing so, they walk straight into the widespread trap of death. The wise, however, recognizing and knowing life eternal, do not seek stability in things that are themselves unstable. They do not seek the eternal through outward physical pleasure born of the senses which are transient and temporary, and therefore cannot lead to the eternal. That by which one perceives form, taste, smell, sounds, and the touches of love. It is by that self alone that one perceives everything. There is nothing that remains unknown to that self, to that Atma. The self, the Atma, knows everything. This really is the truth. That self by which one perceives both the dream states and the waking states, knowing it as the great and the omnipresent self, the wise man does not grieve. He who knows this self, who is the experiencer of everything as the living spirit, which is always close at hand, which is very near us, then, knowing him as the Lord of the past and the future, one does not fear him and one does not run away from him. This really is the self. He was born in the olden times from austerity. He was born in ancient times from the waters. He has entered the secret place of the heart and abides there. It is he who looks forth through all beings. This really is the self. Aditi is the soul of the gods. She rises with all life and is born with all beings. She enters the secret place of the heart and lives there. This really is the self. Agni, who knows everything, who is hidden in the fire sticks, who is like an embryo born carefully by pregnant women. That Agni should be adored and worshipped daily by everyone with offerings. This truly is the self. From where the sun rises and where it sets, that is where all the gods are founded. That is the source of all the gods. No one ever goes beyond that. This truly is the self. Whatever is here in the visible world, that is there in the invisible spiritual world as well. Whatever is there in that world, that too is here in this world. Whosoever perceives and sees anything like division, anything like difference, anything like multiplicity here, goes from death to death. Seeing divisions and differences and not seeing the underlying unity in creation results in man remaining in the cycle of birth and death, in his not attaining salvation. The self can be obtained by the mind alone. There is nothing of variety or difference here. Whosoever perceives and sees anything like variety and difference here goes from death to death. He remains trapped in the cycle of birth and death. The person of the size of the thumb resides in the middle of the body. He is the Lord of the past, the present, and the future. Knowing him as such, one does not have any fear of him. One does not run away from him. This really is the self. The person of the size of the thumb resides in the middle of the body, like a flame without smoke. He is the Lord of the past, the present, and the future. He never changes. He is the same today and the same tomorrow. This really is the self. Water, rained on top of the hill, flows down the hill uncontrolled in all directions on all sides of the hill. So too does the person who views things as different and varied run after them distractedly, totally out of control. As pure water, when poured into the pure, becomes the very same stew, so too does the self of the realized one who has understanding become one with the Supreme when he realizes the Supreme. The soul lives in the body, the city with 11 openings, with 11 gates. This city belongs to the one whose thoughts and intelligence are straight and simple and not crooked. When the soul controls all the openings, all the gates of the city it lives in, when it becomes the ruler of the city of 11 gates, the city it lives in, then does one become freed, and then one does not grieve. This truly is the self. He is the swan. He is the sun in the sky. He it is that pervades the space between the earth and heaven. He is the priest at the altar. He is the guest in the body of 11 gates. He dwells in men. He dwells in gods. He dwells in all that is right, and he dwells in the sky. He is all that is born of water. He is all that springs from the earth. He is all that is born of right, and that is born of the mountain. He is the true and he is the great. He leads the outward breath upward. He draws the inward breath inwards. He is the dwarf seated in the middle, and it is he whom all the gods adore. When the embodied self, the Atma, that dwells within the body, slips off and leaves the body, when it is released from the body, then what is it there that remains? Nothing remains after that. That really is the self. Mortal men do not live by breath inward or outward. They live by that self on which both the inward and the outward breaths depend, and which is the source of both. Look here, O Gautam, I will explain to you the mystery of Brahm, the eternal, and also what happens after death. Some souls enter into a womb for getting a body. Others enter stationary objects according to their deeds and according to their thoughts. He is the one who is awake in all the sleeping, shaping desire after desire. That indeed is the pure. That is Brahm. That indeed is called the immortal. In Brahm do all the worlds rest and culminate, and no one goes beyond that. That really is the self. Fire, which is one, on entering this world becomes varied and different in shape according to the object it burns. So too does the one self become varied and different according to whatever it enters. Fire takes on the shape of the body or the object it enters, while at the same time existing outside the body or the object as well. Air, which is one, on entering this world, becomes varied and different in shape according to the object it enters. So too does the one self, the one Atma, within all beings, becomes varied and different according to whatever it enters. Air takes on the shape of the body or the object it enters, while at the same time existing outside the body or the object as well. The sun is the eye of the world. Though it sees everything, yet it is not defiled, sullied, or polluted by the external faults it sees. Similarly, like the sun, the one self within us all is also not tainted by the sorrow of the world, as it is also outside the world, like the sun. Those who see the one, the controller, the inner self of all beings and things, the one who makes his one form into many, those who see him always abiding in the soul, to them alone is eternal bliss, and to none other. The one eternal amid the transient, the permanent amid the temporary, the conscious amid the conscious, the one despite his many forms and shapes, he who grants all desires, the wise who see him as such, and who also see him as always abiding in the soul, only they get eternal peace, and not anyone else. This is that self, and this is how they recognize the supreme bliss, which is beyond description, which is beyond words. How then may I come to know this self? Does it shine in itself, or does it shine in reflection? The sun does not shine there, the moon does not shine there, the stars do not shine there, nor do any other lightnings shine there. Where then could this fire be? It is in fact the light of the Supreme Self that lights up and illumines the entire world. The sun, the moon, the stars, the lightnings, and everything else shine only because of the light of the Supreme, which is the source of all the light of the universe. Everything shines only because of the Supreme. The ancient fig tree stands with its roots above and its branches below. That indeed is the pure. That is Brahm. That indeed is called immortal. In Brahm do all the worlds rest, and no one ever goes beyond that. This really is the Self. The whole world, whatever exists here and moves in life, springs from Brahm. It is the great fear, like the upraised thunderbolt. From fear of him, the sun shines. From fear of him, the fire burns. From fear of him, the rain, the wind, and death, the fifth, go about doing their work. Just as the body cannot live or act without the soul, so too nothing in the created world can exist independent of Brahma. Those who know this become immortal. If one is able to see him before the body falls away, before his death, while he is still alive, then one would be free from misery and sorrow. If not, then one has to take rebirth in the created worlds. As we see in a mirror, so it is seen as a reflection in the soul. As we see in a dream, so it is seen in the world of men. As an object is seen in water, so is it seen in the world of the celestials. It is seen as shade and light in the world of Brahma. The wise man knows that the separate nature of the senses is because of their different source and origin from various subtle elements and not from the self. He also knows that their rising and their setting are also different. Then, knowing all this, he does not grieve. When the wise man knows that the material senses do not come from the self, and also that their rise and fall also belong to their own nature, then, knowing this, he grieves no more. Beyond the senses is the mind. Above the mind is its intelligence, its essence. Beyond the intelligence is the great self. Beyond the great self is the unmanifest. Beyond the unmanifest is the Purush, the all-knowing, the all-pervading person without any mark whatever. By knowing him, man is liberated and goes to eternal life. This form does not stand within the field of the vision of mortal man. It is beyond the field of his vision. No one whatsoever can see him with the mortal eye. He can, however, be reached, be felt, and even be apprehended by the heart, by thought, and by the mind. Those who know him thus become immortal. When the five knowledge senses, together with the mind, stop doing their normal activities, and the intellect itself remains still, unmoving, and tranquil, that, they say, is the highest state. This they consider to be yoga, the steady control of the senses. Then one becomes undistracted. He cannot be distracted even if yoga comes and goes. He cannot be grasped or understood by speech, by mind, or by sight. How then can he be comprehended except by him who says he is, who says and acknowledges that he exists? He should be understood first as existent and as existing, and then in his real nature. He should be understood in both ways. When he is grasped and understood as existent and existing, then his real nature becomes clear later on. When all the desires that dwell within the human heart are cast away, are thrown away, then a mortal becomes immortal. Even here, in the world of men, he attains to Brahm. There are many knots that tie and shackle the human heart in the world of men and bind him here. When all these knots are loosened and cut open, then does a mortal become immortal. The teaching is thus far only and no more. 101 are the arteries of the heart. One of them leads up to the crown of the head. Going upward through that, one becomes immortal. The other 100 arteries serve for going in different directions. The person of the size of a thumb, the inner self, always abides in the hearts of all men. One should draw him out with firmness from the body, as one draws the wind from the reed. Him one should know as the pure, the immortal. Yes, him one should know as the pure, as the immortal. Thus Nachiketa, having gained this knowledge and the whole rule of yoga taught by death, attained Brahm and became freed from passion and death. And so may any other who knows this in regard to death. End of chapter 2, end of part 3, end of Katha Upanishad. Om. Peace, 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 peace.